Hello and welcome back everyone to Master Blender 3D with Wild West environment. In the last lesson we left ourselves off with a basic type of a start for gray boxing. We got ourselves a human reference over on the side, and we're going to continue on just by simply looking at the images, referencing it, continue on with the gray boxing. So we could get the right nice proportions out of the way. And let's go ahead and start off with this water tower on the side. It's going to be super simple, super easy. Let's go ahead and click Shift and A, get ourselves a mesh that this time is going to be a cylinder. Let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to move it, where is it, location Z, up by 1. So it would be at the base of the cursor over here, just like we did previously. Origin to 3D cursor, and this way we can just scale it up and down whenever we feel like it. Now, let's go ahead and move this up onto the side, just like that. All right, I'm going to scale it up, again, in accordance to the reference that we have. So this water tower is going to be quite tall up. I would say it's 3 meters, almost actually 4 meters. We're not including the top section. I'm going to show you how to set that up in a bit. And yeah, let's go with 3.5 meters wide. So I'm going to click 1 on our Blender file. This way is going to give us that same exact graph. And I'm going to get ourselves that lengthy type of a setup, something like that. I'm also going to click 7 to go to the top-down view and position the structure just like that. All right, so I think this is looking quite nice proportion wise. Of course, we don't have the entire structure, so it's really hard to measure up whether or not it's going to look good composition wise. Especially when creating a new piece, it's really hard again to get the overall feeling and aesthetic of the proportions when working with stylized, especially with the stylized pieces, that is. But once we start working on them, we can come back and just, scale it up, down, however we feel like it. Okay, so going back to the setup. Most of the time, 90% of the time when working with gray boxes, you'll only want to use primitive shapes. However, the 10% that you want is going to be with cases where it's slanted sides. So for example, over here on the water tower, or on this part over here, or even if you look at the front, or actually side view better, is going to have a front roof also slanted. We can't really get that with just basic primitive shapes unless we, for example, rotate it, but we don't really want to do that. We want to make sure it's actually properly slanted, just to kind of give us a better preview of the overall composition. I think that's the only case where I would go and edit in the parts for gray boxing. So in this particular case over here, what we can do is we can just duplicate this part like so. Then we can scale this down a little bit like so. So for such slanted roofs and whatnot, we will need to make use out of the edit mode. To better understand what it is, we're going to go over the basics, over the main controls of it, and then we'll be able to navigate through this entire environment a little bit easier. So I recommend you take it in a pen and paper and taking some notes down, and then afterwards, when we come back to this piece, we'll be able to make use out of the information and get ourselves some nice slanted base roofs for the gray box. So yeah, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.
Welcome everyone to the basics of modeling in Blender, and this is a short introduction just to get you started on a few of the basics in modeling. So the first thing I want to do is bring in a primitive. So the way that we're going to bring into primitive is press Shift and A, and then what we're going to do is open up a menu, and you can see that we've got all of these things along this actual primitives menu, but the one we want to focus on is the actual mesh. And from here you can see we can bring in many things like cylinders, cubes, planes, and the one we want to bring in just for now is going to be our cube. Now that we brought our cube in, the next thing I want to discuss is object and edit mode. And you can see at the moment over on the left hand side we're actually in something called object mode, and this means basically we can manipulate this whole object. So if I press G, I can actually move it around my viewport like so. if I press S to scale, I can actually scale the whole of the object in. But the thing is, we don't really want to work in object mode necessarily, and a lot of the time we're actually going to be working in edit mode. So we can come up to the top left hand side and put this in edit mode, or we can actually press the tab button and jump into edit mode that way. You will notice once we've actually gone into edit mode, we have a lot more options to use, and more importantly, we have a lot of the topology now to play around with. So the first thing you'll notice the difference being is that we have now these three options up at the top left hand side. And if you hover over them, it will say vertex, edges, and faces. Now vertex is going to be these little points here. The edges is going to be these edges of my cube, so any of the edges. And finally, we've got the faces, which is actually the whole polygon face. Now you can also, instead of clicking on these, press 1 on the keyboard, and that then will jump you into vertex select. If you press 2, you can go into edges, and 3 is going to take you into faces. And from here we can actually manipulate any of these parts. So you will notice at the moment I've got a gizmo here. Now if you don't have the gizmo available, come on over to the left hand side and you have this little button here that says move, or you can press shift spacebar and bring in your move tool like so. So now because I'm on faces, I can actually pull out this face like so. If I go to edges, I can actually grab one of the edges and pull this out like so. And if we're on vertexes, I can grab this vertex or grab the second vertex with shift select and then pull this out like so. Really easy to actually manipulate things once you know how to select each of these parts. Now before we go too much in the weeds with actually modeling in this actual edit mode, let's just jump back into object mode for now. What I want to show you is how we can actually move this actual cube around. So as well as moving it with the actual gizmo here, we can also press G and actually free move this object around, or we can press G and Y to, let's put it along the Y axis, move it around, or the X axis for instance and move it this way, or even the Z axis and move it up and down. To drop it back where we started, let's just right click like so. So that's actually moving the location of, it's not a cube anymore, but let's just say it's a cube. We can also scale this in as well with the S button, so we can scale it in or scale it out like so. Now we can also press the S button, hold the shift button, and then we have a lot more finesse on actual scaling. We can also scale this up by, let's say, a factor of 2. So S2, enter, and there we go. And of course, we can scale it down pretty small as well. Now, the next thing I want to discuss is rotating, because if we rotate it with R and just rotate it around, we haven't got a lot of control over how this rotates. So what I want to do instead is I always want to press R, then attach it to an axis, which might be the Y, so the green one, and then rotate it either by freehand or by actually inputting the value on our number pad. So if I want to rotate it, let's say by 90 degrees, press the enter button, and now I've rotated this round by 90 degrees. Now if I want to rotate it back, I can press RY, the little minus button on the number pad, 90, and then we can rotate it back. Now there is something else that you need to know. We also want to reset our transformations, and this is one of the most important things within Blender, because if you don't reset your transformations, Blender still considers this a cube, even though it's not really a cube anymore. So what we want to do to reset the transformations is press Ctrl A, all transforms, and then you'll notice that the orientation has moved over here because it will always move to the center of the world. From there, then we want to actually reset our orientation as well. So we want to right click, set origin to geometry, and then it's going to put the origin right back in the center of this object. Now it's also important to know resetting the transformations will also impact things like UV mapping, things like modifiers. Basically, if you ever have a problem in Blender, always make sure that you reset your transformations, and then most of those problems will definitely go away. Alright, the next thing about resetting our transformations, it makes it really easy then to get something back to how we had it before. In other words, if I press S and scale this down, and then let's press R and Z and rotate it around this way, because before this I actually reset my rotations, what I can now do is press Alt and S and put it back to the scale that it was before I did anything, and then Alt and R and actually reset that rotation as well. So really handy once you've actually reset your transformations in what you can actually do. Now moving on, we're actually going to be looking now at duplication. So if I come around here, I'm able to actually duplicate this. If I press Shift Shift D and then press the enter button, it's now a duplication and I can move this over to the right hand side. So now we have actually two objects. Now what if you want these two objects actually combined and you didn't mean to actually duplicate it in object mode, for instance? Well, that's easy. We can just shift select the other one and press Ctrl J, and now they're both actually joined together, as you can see. So if I press tab now, we're able to come in and actually work on them both at the same time. Now what happens if we want to actually split them up? So we don't want the objects to actually be together. That's also easy. Just make sure that you select one of them first, and then all you're going to do is press L just to select everything. So all of these faces, then you're going to press P, come down to where it says selection, and now if I press tab, they're both actually split off. Now, of course, using the same command, if I press tab, I can actually come in, grab a face, for instance, press Shift D. I can actually also duplicate things with inside edit mode as well. So we might want to duplicate all three of these. Shift D, I can actually come in then and actually duplicate them like so. What it also means though is that these, when you duplicate them in edit mode, will be part of the same object, of course, because in edit mode, they're not actually classed as an object, they're classed as the same actual part. Now for the next part, I'm going to bring in a brand new cube and I'm just going to show you some of the basic modeling techniques within Blender and go through a few of the options. So here we have a brand new cube, and the first one I'm going to show you is, if we come into edit mode, we'll always be working in edit mode to show you these things. Just make sure you're in edit mode. I'm going to grab the top face, and what I'm going to do is press E, and that then is going to extrude this out. Now, sometimes you will need to extrude something out, and it will need to be along a axis, for instance. So all I'm going to do is go to edge select, grab this edge, and then what I'm going to do is press E, and you can see because it's not tied to an axis, it's floating around everywhere. However, if I press the X button, you can see now it extrudes out following along that actual axis, which then makes it really easy to manipulate it where I actually need it to go. The next one we're going to look at is something called beveling, and then all I need to do is come in and I'm going to grab my edge. So I'm going to press 2 on the keyboard, grab an edge like so, and then I'm just going to press Ctrl B like so. And you'll notice now it's actually beveled off that side. You'll also notice down on the left hand side here we have something called an operator panel. It will be closed, just open it up, and from here then with the actual bevel, we're able then to turn the bevels down, for instance, turn them up, move how the shape of the actual bevel is going to be, and all that other good stuff. Now pretty much anything you do in Blender is going to give you an operator panel like this. We're not going to go too much into this, but basically the moment that you press tab button to come out of edit mode, this is going to disappear, and then you're locked in with the actual shape that you've chose, or the insert or the extrusion. So just bear that in mind. So the moment I press tab, that actually disappears. Now what about if we want to bevel off vertices and not edges? So for instance, if I come to a vertex like this and vertex like this, press Ctrl B, you'll see that it bevels off like this. But if I come to one that are the opposites of each other, press Ctrl B, you'll see nothing actually happens. However, if I press Ctrl Shift and B, then we're actually able to bevel off the actual vertices like so. So that's another handy tip for actually beveling. Now the next modeling technique we want to discuss is actually edge loops. So how do we get more geometry onto this? So for instance, I want to bring some edges on here. I can press Ctrl R, and that then will bring me one edge in here. If I left click then, you can see that I can put this either this side or this side. But let's say I want it right in the center. I'm just going to right click on the mouse, and that then is going to put it right in the center. Now the other thing I can do with the operator panel again is I can come in and turn all of these up to give me more actual edge loops, and I can even move them to the left and the right. Now I can also, if I press Ctrl Z, come in, press Ctrl R, I can actually scroll up on the mouse wheel to give me as many edge loops as I actually want. Or if I want a little bit more finesse, I can actually type it out on the actual number pad. So I can type out 120 for instance, and have 120 edge loops. To cancel it at any time, just press the escape button, and then that will cancel it out. Now the next modeling technique I want to show you requires two actual blocks or two cubes like this. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to select opposing faces like so. And then I want to actually join these together, for instance. So all I'm going to do, I've selected them both. I'm going to right click and come down to where it says bridge faces. And now you can see I can actually join those together. Now if I press Ctrl Z and just go back a minute, You can also do this by coming in and let's say grabbing this edge and this edge, and what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to press the F button like so, and come down to the bottom as well and then grab both of these and press the F button like so. Sometimes bridge will not work because bridge has to work with two edges and nothing in between. In other words, nothing selected there. If I come into this one now and try right click and come down to where it says bridge edge loops, you will see select at least two edge loops, so that we can't actually join it all from there, and that is when it's a good idea to use the F button instead. And now the final modeling technique that I actually want to show you is something called insert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this face here, I'm going to press the I button, and then you can see you can actually insert this face in, and from there you can actually extrude it out if you want to. You can also then press Ctrl B and bevel it off if you want to. And you can see now it's really easy to use all of those techniques that I've actually showed you. Now lastly, the last thing I want to show you is the insert again, but this time we're going to grab this face and this face, and if I press I, it's true you can actually insert them both at the same time. Now the best thing though about insert is if I press the I and then press I again, we can actually insert them separately from each other like so. Now I see a lot of renders on Facebook and other social media that kind of look really blocky. And for instance, if I press tab now and go into object mode, you will see this actually looks pretty blocky. But there's a real easy fix for this, so it doesn't actually have to look like that. All you need to do is once you've actually finished, right click, come up and where it says shade auto smooth, and that then will shade it off based on the actual angle. So really easy to either shade flat, shade completely smooth like so, or shade auto smooth like so. If you actually are struggling and you actually want it to shade it a little bit smoother than what it is, you can come over to the right hand side where this little triangle is, go down and open up the normal, and from there you can actually increase this and shade it even more smooth based on a higher angle. The default is always set to 30, so just make sure you set it to 30 in case you actually overdo it. Now the last thing I want to show you in this introduction is the actual cursor, because I think it's very important to actually modeling. So what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to make another cube with Shift D, and then I want this cube on top of this cube, for instance. Now if I move my cursor over here, so Shift right click, and then what I can do is I can press Shift S, and I'm going to go selection to cursor, keep offset, and that then is going to move the exact center of this cube or the orientation to my actual cursor. Now how would I get this then on top of this cube? I would literally grab this cube, I would first of all right click and set the origin to geometry just to make sure that origin is right in the center like so. I would then press Shift S, cursor to selected, and that then is going to put my cursor right in the center, and then I would grab this cube, and from there I'm able to go Shift S, selection to cursor, keep offset, and now that cube is right next to this actual cube here. From here then I can actually bring this up, and let's actually just have a quick play around of everything that we've learned. So you can see now if I pull this up, I'm going to join them both together then with Ctrl J, and then the first thing I'm going to do is come in, grab this face and this face, I'm going to right click then, I'm going to come down to bridge faces, and then I'm going to bring in some edge loops, so let's bring in 2 or 3 edge loops, left click, right click, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt, Shift and click just to select all of this edge going around here, and press the S button and pull it out like so. From there then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bevel off both of these tops, so I'm going to grab this top, Shift select this top, I'm going to press Ctrl B and actually bevel them off like so. From there then I'm going to bring in an insert, so I'm going to grab the front up here, I'm going to insert this with the I button like so. And then from there I'm actually going to extrude out, so I'm going to extrude this out like so. Now let's say I want a bigger piece on the next bit, I'm going to press Shift D, pull it out, so this is a duplicate of this face, I'm going to press the S button to make it a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to press E and pull that out along that axis. Finally then what I'm going to do is grab this one and this one, I'm going to right click then and bridge faces like so. And you can see just how easy this really is now to actually start building out some really complex models with everything that you've just learned. Alright everyone, so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.